Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you all. This is your host Amina Ahmed, and you're watching Muslim Network TV. Welcome back to another episode of NextGen on this week's theme of humanitarian crises that we are facing in our world today. You're watching us on Galaxy 19 satellite, MuslimNetwork.tv, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and soon on Apple TV as well. The crisis that we will be speaking on today is one that has affected this nation since the establishment of the illegitimate state of Israel since 1948. And before we get into the depth of the situation, what it is that the Palestinian people are going through, I just want to throw out some facts, some statistics, some numbers about the oppression of those in Palestine. We have 2 million Palestinians who have been killed since 1935, 1.9 million from war, expulsion, occupation, and derived deprivation, 7 million Palestinian refugees. We see an ethnic cleansing of indigenous Palestinians from 90% of Palestine. We have 5 million occupied Palestinians deprived of all the human rights listed by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Over 7 million Palestinians forbidden to even live in the homeland continuously inhabited by their forebears to the very dawn of agrarian civilization. Palestinian Genocide Organization says that 2 million Palestinians, including 1 million children, are confined without charge or trial to what the Catholic Church and others have described as Israel's Gaza concentration camps. We're living in 2020, the 21st century, and we still have these many people, the sheer number of people being oppressed by an illegitimate state, by a nation whose goal is to oppress those that they cannot coexist with. For their only crime is the asserted crime of being indigenous Palestinians living in a tiny, remorselessly Zionist-bombed patch of Palestine. That was just some numbers, but we have to realize that 2 million is a large number of people who are being oppressed in a country when their only crime is to live in their rightful homeland. This is the situation of Palestinians. It's a situation that the world has been silent on for quite a long time, that many Muslims haven't raised their voices, but we should still give credit, right? We have people out there who are fighting for the freedom and justice of the Palestinian people. We have even Human Rights Watch and the United Nations who have explicitly described the crimes of humanity that have been taking place, under Israel by the IDF soldiers. And, to describe the situation, to describe the utter importance and necessity of talking about the current situation of Palestinians and the oppression that they are facing. We have with us an empowered Palestinian activist, Monia. Thank you, Monia, for being with us. It's an absolute honor for me to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, and Monia, I just, to give a brief bio on you, she's a current rising junior at Lake Forest College. She's passionate about written word and poetry. I can totally relate to that. I love poetry as well. And her plan is to go to law school, start her own international law firm, sue the United Nations, seek reparations, and go to sleep satisfied with whatever she has chosen to do that day. Monia, that is absolutely empowering. I'm in love with that.
That's the goal, since I was a little girl, I've always wanted to, these United Nations peace fighters, they would come to the Gaza Strip, and I would see the things that they would do, the amount of corruption that there is at the United Nations, and I always thought, you know what, I'm gonna start my own law firm one day, and I'm gonna sue all of you and take all of your money. Make it work. So
yeah, inshallah, that's definitely the goal, to attain justice for our people, and your goals are truly, just fascinating. You want to sue the United Nations? Tell me more about that.
Yes, the idea of the United Nations is something that is so fascinating to me, to bring the countries of the world all together to seek peace. They started after World Wars, and its goal was to establish that peace that apparently all the states wanted, all the states aimed to have, because the amount of horrifying stuff that happened during the world wars. So the fact that it's not working, the idea of it's great. The fact that it's not working, and the fact that it's led by the countries that are causing most of the corruption in the world, that are causing most of the tragedies in the world, is something that I cannot accept, and something that I do not want my kids in the future to see. So this is the idea: start my own international law firm and sue them and seek reparations for every marginalized group that was affected by their lack of cooperation, lack of ethical workforce, So seek these reparations, give people their money, and just establish the peace that's needed to be established.
And you know what? I stand with you 100% on that. I hope that that's a project that we can work on together in the future. That's I want to have my own law firm as well. Maybe we can do like a coalition type of thing. That would be absolutely phenomenal.
The more the better.
Yeah, exactly. We also have another Palestinian activist and advocate with us, Dunia. Thank you, Dunia, for being with us today.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here with you all.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure for us to have you. Dunia is a graduate from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. She served as president of Students for Justice in Palestine and served as campus multicultural advocate. She's an active member of the Palestinian Youth Movement and National Students for Justice for Palestine, and she plans to pursue a health career in order to address the health inequity of Palestinians today. That is absolutely phenomenal, Dunia. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
And Dunia, you said that you want to, pursue a medical career so that you can attain justice for your people in Palestine, so that you can address the health inequity in Palestine currently. Can you tell us about that inequity?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of Palestinians in their hospitals, they don't have proper medical infrastructure or technology. So a lot of Palestinians are denied basic treatment that we are privileged to have here in the US and that people are privileged to have in Israel. And when Palestinians do seek that external treatment from Israeli hospitals, they often get denied permits to go to those hospitals, or they often get just denied entrance. So we even saw in the news recently where a newborn baby was denied treatment in an Israeli hospital and they succumbed to their wounds. And like we see this a lot, like especially with children, like no one in Palestine is immune to not receiving proper medical treatment. So I was able to see it firsthand through my cousin when he was shot. He was 14 years old and was shot by the IDF twice. And when he went to the Palestinian hospitals, like you could see the pictures, it literally looked like they were holding his bullet wounds with tape. And like we all know that's not proper like medical technology. They didn't know how to really help him because the bullets that Israel used are called butterfly bullets. And these bullets are like need advanced technology to take them out of your system. So he succumbed to his wounds after 8 days in a coma and was denied entrance into an Israeli hospital. So these are the things that we see happen on a daily basis. My case was not special with my cousin. So for me, like to learn proper medicine here in the US and be able to implement that into the Palestinian community would be like a goal of mine.
Yeah, and Monia, it's beautiful that you want to do law so that you can attain justice in terms of the law field. And Dunia, you want to do a similar thing as well. I think that's absolutely beautiful that both of you hope to use your career to gain justice for Palestinians. But before we go more into the depth of the situation, I want to ask both of you to give a bit of context, on the Palestinian situation, kind of what has led to the current situation that we're seeing in Palestine today.
I mean, the situation could be traced back in history, but after the fall of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire fell, and before that, the United Kingdom declared a declaration called the Balfour Declaration, where they declared Palestine as a homeland for the Jews of Europe. And after the Ottoman Empire fell, in 1923, the Jews of Europe, after, of course, they've been discriminated and burned alive in concentration camps, they fled to Palestine. Fun fact is that when the Jews of Europe came to Palestine at the very beginning, the Palestinians did take them in. The Palestinians took them in their homes, fed them their own food, slept in their own beds, shared their own experiences and lived with them. But after huge amounts of Jews, Zionist Jews, let's call it that to be more politically accurate, Zionist Jews flew in from Europe, things started escalating, and we call it today the day of the Nakba, where everything just went downhill after that. The 15th of May, 1948, when Palestine stopped being a British mandate, and the British completely went out of Palestine. This is when the Israeli state was declared. They call it their Independence Day. They celebrate it these days. And yeah, since then, what happened that day is that even my grandma used to describe it to us. She used to say that they still have the house keys, this is the iconic Palestinian things that they have. They still have the kushan, the ownership papers for their homes, and the house keys that she passed away while it was still around her neck. The idea that they fled, thinking that they would come back, because as Palestine was a British mandate, they were used to British raids and they were used to being kicked out of their homes, but they were always got the chance to come back. But this time they got kicked out and never got the chance to come back. And since then, many deals were signed, many papers were signed, many peace deals were signed, and Israel abused these deals every single time, because we can see the expansion, and right now we're seeing in the annexation of the West Bank currently. It's a situation that's been going only downhill, and something needs to be done at this point. Something has to be done.
And you spoke about the annexation of territories in the West Bank. How is this going to negatively impact Palestinians, the Palestinian people? What are the long-term and the short-term effects of this annexation that Israel has announced?
The annexation of the West Bank is something that is completely illegal. According to international law, it is absolutely illegal, something that cannot happen at this point, because if you think about it, the West Bank is a very, very complex place. I've only been there once, honestly, because the Gaza Strip. I'm from the Gaza Strip, so the Gaza Strip and the West Bank are completely separated. My chances of seeing anywhere else in the world are higher than ever me seeing my people in the West Bank. So I went there once, and the amount of shock that I have faced when I went there, I cannot even put it into proper words, because when you go there, you can see the segregation that is there, because you have the Apartheid Israeli wall that separates Palestinian lands from Israeli territories, and you can see the difference. You can just see one side you have these massive buildings and high infrastructure and services and restaurants and absolute urban life, and on the other side you see these people suffering from every kind of form of discrimination that you could possibly think of, lack of electricity, water, education, healthcare. It's like you're living in two absolutely different worlds, and the annexation will only further expand that. The segregation between different Palestinians. Like, imagine this: one day you and your neighbor were having breakfast together, and the next day there's a wall between you. So can you imagine the amount of, this is their goal. I genuinely believe that this is their goal. Their goal is to only further separate the Palestinian people from each other. Right now, it's very hard for me as a Gazan from Palestine to relate to another person from the West Bank. And as you further separate these people, they think that the goal and the Palestinian struggle and Palestinian fight for freedom and right to self-determination is something that's going to go away. But I really hope that's not the case. But this annexation is something that's my absolute question is, what do they plan to do, the Palestinians that live on this annexed land that they plan to take? Because they're not going to give them Israeli nationality, I can guarantee you that. So under whose government who's going to protect them? What about their rights? What's going to happen to them? That is my absolute concern. They've been taking land since 1948. It's not something that is new to us or something that we're not used to. It doesn't hurt less. It hurts more every single time, but we're used to it. But what happens when you strip these people of their identity? If you tell them that right now you live on Palestinian land, but it's not yours anymore. Yes, you're Palestinian, but your identity doesn't mean anything here. We can kill you. We can take your children away. and there's no form of protection for you because you don't fall under our protection, and the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, can help you at this point. So what are you? Strip away.
Yeah, and you said that you guys are used to, Israel kind of stripping Palestinians of their lands, of killing innocent people, taking their children away from them, and all of these. You said it doesn't hurt any less, and I think that's very powerful. That the Palestinian people have grown accustomed to some of what's been going on in Israel. And Dunia, would you want to add to that kind of and see what direction annexation means for Palestinians?
Yeah, of course. A lot of people like to think of annexation as like some kind of new project, but Palestinians have been suffering under annexation since the beginning of the creation of the state of Israel. So as Monia already talked about, like we saw it with the Nakba in 1948, where they expropriated Palestinian land, which is illegal under international law. We saw it in 1967 in the Six-Day War, where they almost doubled their land grab size from the Palestinian land. And then we continue to see it. We see it in a slow genocide. We see it in a slow annexation so that it can ultimately lead to the ultimate Zionist goal, which is a settler colonial goal. That's goal is to take over all of native Palestine into Israeli land. So for us, annexation is not new. It's just that now it's more popularized. Now people are talking about it. But Palestinians have been talking about it for decades. And I truly believe that now it's really popularized because liberal Zionists and young American Jews are starting to talk about annexation and how much it's going to impact this two-state solution and how much it's going to impact like the way people are going to see Israel and stuff of that sort. So if we've been listening to Palestinians for decades, then annexation would have been popular a long time ago.
Yeah, and Dunia and Monia will be speaking more on the issue of liberal Zionist and American Jews. I think that's something that's been coming up recently a lot, and we'll speak about that right after our short break. You're here on Galaxy 19 Satellite, MuslimNetwork.tv, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and soon on Apple TV as well. We'll be right back after our break. Welcome back to NextGen. We're here with Monia and Dunia speaking on the issue of Palestinian liberation. Now, we spoke on, liberal Jews, liberal Zionists. Tell me about the new movement to describe Israelis as indigenous people. And, when I first was met with, that perception, that perspective, I was completely baffled at the fact that they can describe themselves as indigenous people. Where does that even stem from? Where does that notion, come from? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I can talk about this really quick. I think with that in the media recently, especially during these times, we've seen a lot of progressive language be popularized. such as like talking about land indigeneity, talking about settler colonialism. So these are becoming more popularized in the progressive field. And we see that a lot of liberal Zionists, which I think are worse than conservative Zionists, because I feel like they're holding a mask under their true views. They're trying to co-opt this progressive language. So co-opting it is trying to make it seem as if it was their own. And honestly, like, it's used as a means to justify the Zionist project. So for us, I don't even engage in conversations on Jewish indigeneity to Palestine, because for me, that nothing ever will justify the occupation of the Palestinian people and their apartheid. So for me, it's almost like to deflect, to justify, and also it's co-opting this language that we're using in progressive activism fields.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. And for both of you, this is kind of a question that I want to ask to clarify, right? Many people have continued to support Israel because of Israel's portrayal of, their religious kind of connections to that land. How do you think that has affected the support that we're seeing, for Israel versus the support that we're seeing for Palestinians? Israel continues to say that they have the right to their, proclaimed homeland.
It is absolute nonsense, It is absolute nonsense, because when the state of Israel got created by these Zionist Jews, they were secular Zionist Jews. They looked at their Jewishness, if I might call it that, as more of an identity rather than a religion or relation to God or any kind of religious practice. So when they came in, they wanted to create a state that was based on the discrimination that they have faced in Europe, based on not their practice of the religion, but rather them being associated with the religion in the first place. So these, even if you go to Israel right now, I have got the chance to visit for like a day, luckily, a secular state. Absolutely secular. The amount of practice that you see in the amount of practice of Judaism that you see over there is merely concentrated in some areas. You can see it in Bethlehem, a little bit in Jerusalem, but if you go deeply into the occupied territories, absolutely secular. You don't see any practice of the religion whatsoever. So their claim that they are the God's promised people is not something. These are, you see it in their faces. How can you? Palestine is a Middle Eastern territory. We're Middle Eastern. We have a certain skin color and the way that we look. These are white settler Europeans. This is what you see over there. So their claim that they are the indigenous people is absolutely incorrect, because I had to do this. I had to ask myself that question. I was growing up. I had to ask myself, maybe they're right. Maybe they're right. Maybe we took the land away from them, because nobody could deny the fact that the Jews lived in Palestine before the Arabs did. Nobody could deny that. So I took a DNA test, I did one of these DNA tests, and apparently I am the Jew. My great grandparents were Jewish. And when, people change because of people move and their identities change and languages change and religions change, because that's what people do. And their claim that they belong in this land is absolutely incorrect, because give me your birth certificate. Where'd you come from? Tell me where'd you come from, and I'll show you mine, and I'll tell you where I came from. And this is my argument, as Dunia has said, I don't indulge in these conversations anymore. I realize, especially at university and at college, I realize that I will no longer entertain debate to anybody about my right to exist. I'm not gonna entertain debate you anymore. I exist because I exist. I exist because I deserve to do so. And it's not my job to convince you. It's your job to learn about your history and mine, and seeing who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah, I think to add to this, what's really hindering about tying religious claims to the land is that anytime anyone criticizes Israel in any capacity, they're automatically deemed anti-Semitic by Jewish people. And as someone who's non-Jewish, like, these are always like smear campaigns, Calling someone anti-Semitic is a really heavy word. And I feel like a lot of Zionists throw around this word like it's nothing, just to stifle any criticism of Israel. And for me, it's really dangerous, because as an anti-Zionist, I know people are going to equate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, and that harms the movement because people are starting to see you as someone who's a bigot and someone who's against religions. And I also feel like it's anti-Semitic in its own by doing that, because there's a lot of Jewish people who are anti-Zionist, and that number is ever growing. And for you to call them anti-Semitic or invalidating their Jewishness is a form of anti-Semitism in itself. So I feel like these forms are often used to shut down conversation on Israel, and tie it back to the religious claims. And even if you look at history, like the father of Zionism, Theodor Herzl, he said that the land of Zion, which is Palestine, he said that that would be an effective rallying cry for Jewish people. So he used it as a mobilization tactic to bring Jewish people to the land of Palestine. So a lot of people thought they were coming to Palestine because it was a Jewish nation, but really they were coming for economic opportunity. They were coming because of these propaganda that Zionists were spewing from as early as the 1800s. So for me, like I think a lot of Zionists really need to study their own history about the founders of Zionism and what this history called for as was a settler colonial ideology. Like Theodor Herzl wrote to C.C. Rhodes, which is the South African colonialist. He wrote to him advice on how to colonize Palestine. He did not say how to make a Jewish nation. He said how to colonize Palestine. But what we see is that it turned into an ethno-state thriving off of Jewish nationalism.
Wow, you said a lot there, and one of the things that I think is it's an ongoing issue, right? Equating anti-Zionist to anti-Semitic. And I think that's one of the reasons many public figures, social media influencers, celebrities aren't speaking up about Palestine. I know many people have, tweeted hashtag Free Palestine. And just for that one tweet, they had to apologize, publicly. Why is it that celebrities are, hesitant to raise awareness about the situation of Palestine? It's because we do need their support. We need the support of as many people as we can get. So why is it that they are so slow or hesitant or reluctant to do so?
I think the reason behind that is the association between the Free Palestine movement or the statement of Free Palestine and its association with the hatred of Jews, that is not the case. There are Palestinian Jews, there are Arab Jews. They've been there for a really long time. When we say Free Palestine, we are advocating for the rights of the Palestinian people, the right to own their own homeland, their right to exist, the right to be free, the right to have access to any of the services and the rights that any other person in the world has. That doesn't mean when I say Free Palestine, that doesn't mean I hate XYZ, or I hate these particular people, or I want them to die, or I want them to suffer. That is absolutely not the case. So when a celebrity or somebody tweets Free Palestine, that to them that means, to most of the audience, it probably means that, like the Jews got burned in Europe, you want that to happen again. That is not the case whatsoever. What it means is that the state of Israel should be demolished and for the Palestinian state to be reinstated and for it to exist again. And for the Jews of Europe that came into Palestine, nobody says leave. You can stay. I can tell you from the Palestinian people, nobody says that you'll have to be kicked out. We have, sympathy. Sympathy is here. And nobody says leave, but for you to exist and discriminate against the indigenous people that have been here for centuries, this is the thing that we disagree for. When we say Free Palestine, it means free the Palestinian people from the discrimination that they have been living under for centuries. Nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah, and another thing that we're seeing, Dunia, I want to kind of put this to you because you're so involved in, Youth for Palestine in your college, for instance. What is the connection between American liberation movements and the Palestinian liberation movements? I see a lot of allyship, right, between, for instance, the Black community and the Palestinian community. What is the connection between these two movements?
Yeah, I think it's easy as state-sanctioned violence. We both know what it means to suffer at the hands of the state and as the hands of brutal forces, such as like the Israeli Defense Force, and then in America, the police force, the American police force. So for us, we draw these ties and a lot of similarities, which you'll see within the Black Palestinian Solidarity movement. So for instance, a lot of American police officers go to Israel to get trained on how the best tactics to harm Black and brown folks here, and the IDF is using these tactics on Palestinians in Palestine. They also train them on having riot gear. So we saw them during the Ferguson protests. We saw during the recent George Floyd protests, these police emerging in riot gear. These are all taught by the Israeli Defense Force in Israel. We saw even the police chief of Ferguson that went to Israel to get trained. And through this, we also see a lot of solidarity. So when the protesters in Ferguson were getting tear gas, people in Gaza, Palestine, were tweeting at the people in Ferguson, hey, like when tear gas approaches you, run away from the wind, use milk instead of Coke use Coke instead of milk in your eyes, like advice on how to deal with tear gas. And we also found out that the same tear gas company is the same one from Israel all the way from Ferguson. So these ties are interconnected because the same systems are oppressing us. The same capitalist companies are oppressing us. So for us to draw our ties together will only make our movement stronger and end state-sanctioned violence for all of us.
We'll be speaking more on how to end state-sanctioned violence right after our short break. I'm here with Monia and Dunia. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back to NextGen. We're here with two empowered activist young women, Monia and Dunia, who are speaking on the oppression of the Palestinian people. Now, to both of you, the situation in Palestine doesn't seem to, be improving whatsoever. I think it can even be said that it's just getting worse, right? What is the way moving forward for the Palestinian people to attain justice? What is the solution for Palestinians right now?
I can go. I think the biggest thing we need to do is listen to Palestinians that are suffering under occupation. A lot of the times we see like liberal Zionists, we see young American Jews try to give their takes and their nuances on the conflict, when in reality that Palestinians have been saying what they've been saying for years. It's just who's listening. So for us, when Palestinians under occupation are telling us they want a one-state solution where everyone can coexist and have equal rights, we need to believe them. We need to listen. We need to fight for their rights, So for us, as being privileged here in the U.S. and in the diaspora, the most we can do is educate people on what Palestinians are suffering. So for me, like, I know my family in Palestine, they love it when we do activism here. We organize, we post on social media. They love that because they feel that we haven't given up on their cause, that they're not suffering for no reason. So for us, I feel like the least we can do here in the U.S. using our privilege here is to educate ourselves first and foremost, educating the people around us, and then organize. There are so many Palestinian orgs, local and national, that everyone can join and become organized, whether you know how to make a flyer for an event, whether you know how to mobilize people, whether you know how to do anything, and everybody's knowledge can be used to help organize for Palestine. Whether you think maybe I'm not in the activism field, no, everybody is. Everybody can help somehow. So I feel like the most we can do here is educate and organize and listen to Palestinians that are suffering under occupation.
If I could add that,
Yeah, go for it.
one thing, the most that any American could do is push your leaders and go out there and vote. Just go vote and vote right when you do so. Because I don't think a lot of people understand this, but the impact of American politics on the amount of power that Israel has in Palestine, it's huge. So like since the moment Trump has been elected, things have been only getting worse in a way that they haven't been in a really long time. So just go out there and vote, make your voice heard. And as Dunia said, educate yourself. A lot of people think that choosing a side between Israel or Palestine is a political one. I really don't think so. I think it's a conscious one. I think it's a fight between what's right and what's wrong, and it's a matter of like choosing the right side of history to stand on. And as a lot of people have been saying, when you choose to be silence is violent these days. If you choose to be silent, it's a form of compliancy and a form of violence. And if you are silent during times like this, whether it's with the movement here in the United States or any form of oppression that is happening around the world, it means that you're siding with the side of the oppressor. So make your voice heard and exercise your rights. You have a right here. Vote, so do it.
Yeah. I wish more people had, gone in and vote for Bernie too. That would have been, that was a lot of our dream. But going back to, this solution based around what's going in Palestine, what's going on, the current situation in Palestine, why is a two-state solution not the answer? Because that's an argument that I've got a lot where people are like, okay, cool. I support Palestine. I'm an ally of Palestine, but I also support a two-state solution. Why is that not okay?
I think annexation just showed us why it's not okay. Annexation just proved to all these liberal Zionists out there, all these J Streeters, that two-state solution was never a viable option. Who negotiates with their oppressor? Who's going to negotiate with a settler colonialist country and ask them, do you want to split halvesies? Like, first of all, that's not justice. And when we're looking at justice, we need to look at who's oppressed and who's the oppressor. We need to listen to the oppressed. So for us, justice is seen as a fully returned Palestinian state, because that is how it was in history, and right of return for Palestinian refugees. There are millions of Palestinian refugees around the world who, as Monia mentioned earlier, they still have the keys to their home from 1948. They are waiting to come back to a free and liberated Palestine. So a lot of people say two-state because they don't want to ruin the Jewish majority. We don't need a Jewish majority for a Palestinian country. It can be a true democracy where everybody can coexist, where we can have Palestinian Jewish representation in government. Like, these are all things that are possible, but people like to focus on a two-state so that it can have a Jewish nation and then everybody else. Why we can all coexist and have true justice in one country. And through that, we also seen throughout time that Israel is formed because of Zionism. Zionism is the violent settler colonial ideology that thrives off of Palestinian victimhood and Palestinian genocide. So when we allow the state of Israel to exist, we're allowing this violent ideology of Zionism to thrive. So we need to destroy Zionism at its core, and through that, we cannot have an illegal Israeli state. We cannot thrive off of a state that was built off the displacement of 750,000 Palestinians. So I think when we look at Zionism, when we look at everything in like a colonial framework, we're better able to understand why we cannot thrive in an Israeli state, why it needs to be a one state called Palestine with everyone coexisting under equal rights.
And to both of you, right? You're absolutely right with what you're saying, that, as the oppressors, they cannot negotiate with those, that are oppressing them, right? As those who are oppressed, there's no kind of middle ground, and what is the role of Western countries in all of this? Have they responded adequately to the cries of the Palestinian people, or have they just been adamant in their support of Israel?
There's been a lot of compliancy and a lot of silence and a lot of fake promises. And this is, I'm talking about mostly about like the Arab nations that surround Palestine and the Israeli state currently. They've tried. They tried during the 6-Day War and they failed. And after that, there was a moment of like, I give up. There hasn't been proper effort since then. I think the oppression of the Palestinian people has become of benefit to every other person out there. So it's become a case of like, I am benefited by the oppression of these people, so I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to say publicly, it's fake activism. I'm going to say publicly that I stand by you, that I support you, that I stand with your cause. But when it comes time to take action and sign the paper that needs to be signed, everybody's just silent and quiet, because everybody wants to be on the good side of the powerful state here, and the states, the United States and Israel. And if you're on their bad side, then you're gonna be in a position of disadvantage. But right now we can't stay quiet. We need absolute support at this point, because as we can see, if this keeps on escalating at this point, the Palestinian state is going to disappear completely. They're annexing 30% of the West Bank right now. 30% of the West Bank, and previously 50% of the West Bank has been annexed. So what's left out there? The Palestinian state is slowly diminishing, and at some point the West Bank is not going to be part of the Palestinian territories anymore, and we're going to be left with the small chunk of land that's called the Gaza Strip. And I can guarantee you, in a matter of 20 years, they're gonna throw some kind of bomb that's gonna kill everybody over there, and it's not gonna exist anymore. So right now we need absolute action and immediate action to change all of this.
Yeah, also it's important to note that the US actually gives the Israeli military over $4 billion a year using our tax dollars. So they're not only complicit in the oppression of the Palestinian, they're directly funding it. So that is why we call for boycott, divest sanctions, why we call for BDS, so that people can boycott companies that are complicit, that are working on settlements like SodaStream, companies like Sabra Hummus. These are directly profiting off of the Israeli occupation of Palestine, and why we call on universities around the world to divest, have their universities divest from companies that are directly funding the occupation. So like my instance, my university, UIUC, we ran a divestment campaign to divest from this company that was producing the tear gas that was used in Ferguson and in Palestine. So we need to have these calls to action. These are actual steps, and then we can finally sanction Israel through the BDS.
Yeah, and I want to end on one thing, right? I want your message to those who hope to be allies to the Palestinian cause, to the Palestinian people. What is your message to them? What are actual action items that they can do to support Palestinians?
As a Palestinian from the Gaza Strip, my first time coming to the United States was last year, and one of the first things that shocked me so much is the amount of ignorance there is over here about the Palestinian cause. So many people, when I tell them I'm from Palestine, they assume that I'm from Pakistan, and which is another state on the other side of the world. Educate yourself. Education is the best form of resistance, I have come to learn, because when you know, this is when you understand. When you understand is when you know what to fight for exactly. And have that difficult conversation. Have that difficult conversation with your parents. Have that difficult conversation with your peers. And don't think that it's okay for a person to say, oh, you have your own opinion and I have mine. In these kinds of situations, there isn't you have yours and I have mine. It's a form of like, here's what's right and here's what's wrong, and you make a decision in this case. And if you choose the wrong side in this case, then have that difficult conversation and try to convince them, try to change their mind. And as I said, education is a process, and education is the best form of resistance. Don't be afraid to change your mind. If you have been taught something your whole life about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, and one moment you meet somebody that changes your mind, don't be stubborn and decide to, okay, I'm going to stick with this because this is what I've been taught my whole life. It's okay to just stand with yourself and be like, I'm sorry, I've learned. I'm sorry, I've changed my mind. This is what is right. Educate yourself. There are a lot of petitions that you can sign. There are a lot of places where you can donate. There are a lot of organizations that you can go and volunteer. There's so much to do. But the first step to take is wanting to do something and not be silenced, because, as I said, silence is compliancy, and we don't need that right now.
And Monia, what is your piece of advice to those that hope to stand with the Palestinian cause?
If you hope to stand, make your voice heard. Right now, social media is screaming with different kinds of movements and different kinds of activities that you can do. Right now, make your voice heard. If there's an opinion that you think should be heard, especially here in the United States, there's a huge amount of I don't want to say silence again and ignorance, but it is the case because people do not know. Make your voice heard. Speak up. If you have something and you think that thing that you have to say needs to be said, say it, and say it out loud, because now is the time. Now is the time, because if we don't do it right now, things are really gonna de-escalate pretty fast. I'm very as a Palestinian, I'm very scared right now. I'm scared for myself. I'm scared for my family. I'm scared for my culture. I'm scared for my identity. I'm scared that one day I'm not gonna have a home to go back to in the first place. Like I have a home in Gaza, I can't go back. I haven't been home in a couple of years because of what's been happening. So I'm scared that one day when I grow up, my kids are not gonna have, they're not gonna know where home is because it's not gonna be there anymore. So make your voice heard right now so future generations and myself can feel secure at some point to call a place home. And imagine this feeling like there isn't a place to go to call home. Imagine the amount of insecurity that you feel in that case, the amount of fear that you feel, the amount of feeling like you don't belong anywhere. So make your voice heard, shout for those who can only whisper right now.
Yeah. And Dunia, I wanna end on your piece of advice to everyone else, and I wish that we could continue this conversation for a long time. It was truly enlightening. And Dunia, I just want to hand it over to you right now.
Yeah, my piece of advice would be we need to tackle Zionism at its root. We need to tackle it at its core. We need to get Zionism out of our schools, out of our spaces, out of our progressive spaces. By doing that, we are calling for Palestinian liberation. Palestinian liberation will never thrive as long as Zionism exists. So we need to do BDS, like I said. We need to organize. We need to call ourselves proud anti-Zionists. We need to rid Zionism from every space that we walk into. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that will free Palestine is getting rid of Zionism and the Israeli state that is directly oppressing them. So by doing that, organize, listen to Palestinians, and try to tackle Zionism how you can do it in your everyday life. And you can start by doing that by following the Palestinian Youth Movement on Instagram and on Facebook, on Twitter, and also National SJP. These are orgs that consistently post a lot of Palestine educational material so that you can better educate yourself. And they also post a lot of actions that are happening around the US and the diaspora.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dunia and Monia, for being with us today. It was an absolute honor and pleasure for us to have you and listen to your wise words and your pieces of advice. I hope that our audience takes away actual action items that both of them presented that you guys can go out and do and support the Palestinian people. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you all.